Hey team, I'm going to do a quick presentation here on how to fill out a buyer's agency agreement. So I'm in DocuSign, and I'm going to briefly talk about how to present the three documents that we need to get from a buyer before we start showing them properties. So remember guys, the consumer's guide, for example, is supposed to be signed at the time you first start working with a client, the first substantive meeting. So whether that's your buyer consultation, whether it's a listing appointment, you should always get your team disclosure and your consumer's guide signed at that time. Now remember, in July, that's when it's going to start with, technically we are supposed to have a buyer's agreement signed by a buyer before even showing them the first house. I'll do a video on more detail how to get that handled. But basically I'm in DocuSign. I started a new envelope and I have a little package, a buyer package, new buyer package right here. I'm not sure what it's called in the team DocuSign account, but there's three documents here. It's the consumer's guide, the team disclosure, and the buyer's agency agreement. I like presenting them in this order because it flows kind of nicely. The consumer's guide is non-committal. It's just informational. The team disclosure, again, just informational. It talks about the $495 team fee, and then the buyer's agreement is the contract. Okay, so here's the three documents. We're going to add our recipients here. I'm just going to have me be on here initially. I'm going to delete the buyer one, buyer two, although this is how you would send it to a client if you wanted to do it in DocuSign. And here you would put your message. Hey, this is those three buyer documents we talked about. You have a little message here and click next. Now, as I present these, like I said, this is kind of a nice flow to the presentation. So here's the consumer's guide. It's an informational document that we have to have on file, and it doesn't commit you to anything. It just tells you that we can represent sellers. Agents can also represent buyers. And in Ohio, dual agency is allowed. So in other words, if you wanted to buy one of our team listings, I could be a dual agent representing both the buyer and the seller. This goes on to explain dual agency more, our company policy, and it goes on to discuss that in length. I suspect that dual agency will remain. We'll have a word from Tony and Brenda when we know more, but for now, I'm going to guess that we're going to keep dual agency. I think some companies are going to get rid of it. How we work with other brokerages, and then, of course, our fair housing statement and sign and date here. Pretty straightforward. You guys have been presenting consumers guides for years. Team disclosure. This we are constantly updating because we're changing vendors, adding and deleting people. It basically just talks about how you have a whole team of people working for you. And this is one of the ways that we give our value proposition to our buyers. Hey, instead of just working with a solo agent, agents can sometimes go on vacation. They can be unavailable, busy with other clients. I have a whole team around me. We have admin staff, our wonderful admin staff who helps us get things done when we're busy. It doesn't matter. Documents are getting done, follow up with title lenders, the other agents. It's all happening on our behalf by our amazing admin and support staff. If I'm not available, one of my teammates can show you houses. So when you sign a buyer's agreement with me, you're hiring a whole team of agents, especially in this market. How important is it to be able to get into listings quickly and write your offers quickly? That's why you hire us, because we're going to help you win against other buyers who may not have all the services and a whole team of agents like we have. It mentions our $495 fee here, and I'll go over that on the buyer's agreement. And then here's our disclaimer about the recommendations that we make. We have three lenders on here. We have three title companies. This one is going to change a little bit, so we'll update you on that. Remember, guys, Infinity Title is our ABA. It's no longer Beth Anthony. It's a different contact now, but that's who we really like to advocate for if we can, and of course explain to people that we're affiliated with that title company. Cleveland Home Title is wonderful. Mike McHale does a great job, and we'll be putting in another option here. Pinnacle is no longer Pinnacle, so we'll be updating this soon. Here's some home inspections. These are all really great people that we've had really good luck with so far on the team. A couple insurance company recommendations, and then of course our home warranty companies. America's Preferred, the first one, is the one that we really like to recommend. And we think their policy is the best. It's the right price. It's not the cheapest, but it's good coverage, and we really like their service, which is so important. All right, next we're going to do the buyer's agency agreement, a quick presentation and how to fill it out. So remember, the buyer names would be here. So this is an agreement between us, between the buyers and the agent and brokerage. And that's all of us. Remember, when you sign a buyer agency agreement, it's with the brokerage and us, the team. So you fill in their names here, one or more names, the purpose, what type of search they have. So it might be single family primary residence. Then the beginning and end term. Okay, so this one here, you might drop a text box or just have it dated whenever the buyers sign, but it might be from today through whenever, say end of the year. That's how long the commitment is. Now, as I'm presenting this further down, there's a cancellation clause, which is really how I can try to close the deal if people are hesitant about signing this. As I'm presenting this, I'd like to make it all about the services to the client, but it also explains how we get paid. Here's our duties, and here's the duties of the buyer. You guys should know this and really be able to explain what you're going to do for them and what you expect them to do on their behalf, to really make sure that you're working well together. Again, make it about benefits to them. Don't make it about, well, I need to get paid, or I put a lot of time in, so I need to get paid. It's not about that. It's about the things that we do for our clients. As I mentioned earlier, the whole team being available, knowing the strategies to win in multiple offers. I've got a great video on that, guys, if you haven't watched it. So here's the compensation part that is sometimes confusing. By the way, guys, make sure you are using right now this version of the buyer agreement, the Ohio Realtors version. It's in Google Drive and it should be in DocuSign. Also, whenever you're doing other documents, make sure you're using the most up-to-date version of the team disclosure. So here's the way you fill this out. There's a flat fee of $4.95. And if you leave it blank, it says it's not applicable. And then of course, we'll have to pay the $350. You and I will split that, but I'd rather $5. The couple extra dollars we collect here, $145, that is also split. When we collect that, whatever our team split is, if you guys are getting 70 and the team's getting 30, you get 70% of that $145 extra that we're collecting, plus a percentage. So our compensation is the flat fee plus the percentage. Okay, now this goes on to explain that even after 90 days or whatever you guys fill in here, if they buy a property you showed them, this agreement still applies. And the reason for that is that we don't want to have people see properties with us and then say, well, I'm going to cancel this agreement so I can just buy it on my own. Not that you would do that, I would say, but of course, this is why we have this. This is our agreement to work together. Regarding the compensation, the way I like to start this conversation is to ask this question. I like to say, are you familiar with how agents are paid? And more specifically, how buyers agents are paid? Some people may have an idea, some people won't. But by asking that question first, that tells you how much you need to explain. Many people might say, oh, well, doesn't the seller pay you? And I like to grab onto that and say, yes, in most cases, that's what happens. Okay, but in some cases, that's not what happens. And that's why we have this agreement. The example that we like to use is a for sale by owner or off-market properties. So another value proposition we can show to our buyer clients is the fact that we have so many listings. You know, right now we're anywhere between 50 and 100 listings. Isn't it great to be part of a team where we're always bringing listings in and we might have an inside track on getting those properties for our buyers? Likewise, if you're doing your prospecting, you should be aware of properties that are coming up. One of our teammates recently just did a postcard campaign where he mailed postcards to a whole neighborhood saying, I have a buyer who would love to get into this neighborhood. So saying that we as a team are constantly prospecting for properties for our buyers, that's a real value proposition. So if I'm talking to a buyer, I might say something like this. Most cases, you're right, the seller pays us, but in some cases, there may not be a payment by the seller. If I could help you get a for sale by owner or an off-market property, for example, wouldn't it be worth it to pay me for those services? And oh, by the way, we can still ask the seller to pay us, but if they won't, that's when you pay us. We can also adjust your offer accordingly. So you'll know ahead of time if there will be you paying our buyer's agent fee. And if you are paying it, we'll adjust your offer a little lower to compensate for the fact that you'll be paying that fee. Now, this line right here, this is for the minimum commission. Okay, so this is like if you have buyers shopping in a very low price range. Okay, so it's this or this. And I would always make sure to fill this in and make sure to include the $4.95. So for example, here I might write $24.95. In no case shall the compensation be less than $24.95, $2,000 plus the $4.95. And it says right here, we'll make our best efforts to obtain the commission. That means to get it from the seller. Now, if they pay part of it, then the buyer only has to pay the remaining part. And guys, have a set policy on this, whether it's $34.95, $24.95, $39.95, whatever it is, but have a set policy on this. Try not to have different minimum commissions for different clients. Okay, next page here. There's two check boxes. I deleted the buyers, so there's check boxes are gone, but they either consent or don't consent to accepting compensation from more than one party. Guys, we want consent and be able to explain it to them. Say, look, this helps you. If the seller will pay part of the commission, then you will pay less. So you want, the reason this benefits you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is that the sellers can pay part of the commission. Here's the termination clause. This is how I close people on signing this. I'll just say, look, you can cancel this. If I'm not doing a great job for you, or if we're not working well together, either one of us can cancel this agreement at any time. Now, I like to say, hey, for Century 21, give me 21 days. Give me a 21-day notice, and I will try to make it right. And I might write in here with 21 days notice. I take a text box and write with 21 days notice right there. Or just leave it like that and leave it as a cancel at any time. The rest of this is kind of standard boilerplate language that you should be familiar with, and if they have questions, be able to answer. And then any additional notes would go here. Fair housing statement, signatures, that's it. So that's how you fill it out, guys, and a quick little snippet on how to present it. I'm going to do a longer video on our complete buyer consultation, and I also sent out the video from Chris Collette. So if you haven't watched that yet, please watch that video. He does a great job with a buyer presentation. All right, guys, if you have any questions, ask me or the admins on how to fill out these documents.